So welcome everybody to Wednesday study groups and turn-cue combinations. I know I say this too much, but it is one of my very, very favorite subjects. It's all based in footwork. And recently I was talking to you all and my in-person students about how configurations, because I'm writing about configurations right now. By configurations, I mean serpentines, pinwheels, 270s, 180s, threadles, obstacle configurations that that are, well, they could be in the start, the middle, or the end of a sequence. And I don't know about you, but when I look at a course, there's like sections of it. There's like the opening section, and they're kind of broken up. This isn't not an absolute. This is not an absolute, but they're kind of broken up often by tunnels, contact, obstacles. But there's usually on course little sections of jumps. And so I call those sequences. Usually in a class, when you're working a course, there'll be a particular sequence, often hooked up by contacts and tunnels. So within the sequence are the configurations, and then the sequences make up the courses. So I'm enjoying talking this way. And so tonight I realized what we're working on is kind of single jump, 1 and 2 jump. And I have that program called 1 Jump, 2 Jump that we're gonna resurrect as the next step after my pre-agility class, which is coming out soon, which has got some new stuff that I'm excited about. I've been talking about a little bit. So turn-cue combinations are like learning the alphabet. And then we learn the words, and then we make sentences and paragraphs, and then we write books. So that's the same thing as single jump skills and going to configurations, going to sequences, going to courses. I did forget to say we are recording. And I think that with me talking about recording, that I'm encouraging people to turn their cameras off. I don't want to do that. I want you guys to have your cameras on so I can see you, and don't be shy. I want you on the recording. I was asking for folks to mute themselves just for audio purposes, which you all are. And then when people were on iPhones, they were making some noise and their phone number was coming up. So that was to protect them. So I think you guys should be brave and let me see your smiling faces and your eyes so we can interact a little bit. But I won't make you, oh, yay, there's a,
Sandy, so
yes.
what I was told is that you should turn off the audio for the feedback, but also the video to decrease the broadband. So I may be a little bit late coming in this since I just got on, but so that's why I've been keeping it off. Does that affect you? Because I've been trying to spare a better connection.
Yeah, it's not, that has been, but I think that might be when they get up into the hundreds, or I think if any of you are experiencing technical difficulties, you could certainly try that. And I did, some of you have just popped in, we were well into it when I remembered that I hadn't put up my we are recording sign. So I'll recap very briefly. And if you guys need to turn your cameras off, do, but I love seeing everybody. So I appreciate those of you that turned your cameras on. So back to turn-cue combinations are, you guys, what I'm getting from them. Yes, my dog and I are getting in sync, but it's really about the footwork. It's perfecting turn-cue, the footwork, the cue. To me, the turn cue is a combination of the perfect verbal cue and smooth handling. And smooth handling is handling that is replicated. Just like smooth verbal cues are verbals that are replicated. It isn't sit, 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 sit. You sit, come on, sit. So those to me are all different cues. And so sit is my cue. Hey, what are you doing? Sit. I love you so much. Sit. Hey, you get over here. Sit. So I've taught myself in the car when I'm driving and there's no one with me, unless I hate them and I want to torture them, then I do it when there is someone with me. But I've taught myself those voice inflections. So as all of my cues, I want to be clear. So the footwork is the physical part. Are my hands involved? Yep. Are my eyes involved? Yep. Does every part of me have a job description? Yep. Do I have to be perfect? Nope. But the more things I get right, the easier it is on my dog. What do dogs do when things are easy? What do dogs do when things are easy for them? You'd have to unmute yourself for me to hear you. I know that's the only problem that we're having. Is that
They accelerate with confidence.
Oh, Cindy. Oh, she got the double. They accelerate, and they accelerate because they have confidence, because it's clear, because it's a neon sign. Rock on, Cindy. We've been hanging out too long. So the turn cue combinations are more for me. My dog is learning as I'm perfecting them. So the 7 basic turn cues, my gosh, should I torture you further? Should you all unmute and yell out the 7? I call them basic, or I call them my turn cues, because now the world of agility has, I think we're up to what, 237? That's a joke, but there are like 30. And so I've had to say these are my 7 basic turn cues. I think if you know these, you're good to go. Anybody want to throw one out there? Unmute yourselves, everybody. We're small. We can get personal. Throw me out a turn cue, baby.
Dig, dig, dig.
Yeah, dig, dig, dig.
So that is the verbal cue for what turn?
Rap. Rap.
Okay. So a rap is, you could get your dog to rap. This will be fun, by doing 2 specific turn cues. There's 2 cues that you could do to create the rap motion of the dog. Anybody?
Shoulder.
Well, then are you talking left or right? Or are you talking tight or loose?
Well, a rap is a tight by definition. So you could get a tight, so you could get a rap with a left or a right if you had the variation of the left and right to go. You could also create that with a pull cue. You could create a rap with a pull cue. You could also get a 180 with a pull cue that wasn't tight. You could get it with a front cross.
Right.
So now we've got 3 out of 7. Pull, front cross, left and right, rear cross. Yep. I'm going to help you with the others. They're harder. I call a turn cue a push through, which is a backside cue. I call it a push, when you're pushing the dog to the backside, because there's never a time that you would send your dog to the backside that you didn't want to turn. So that officially is a turn cue. The dog takes the refusal line, turns and takes the bar. So push through is one. And then lateral motion. And lateral motion, if this stuff is intriguing you, get the feet, come to the webinar. There's one tomorrow on Thursday night, and there's one on Saturday. And you get the whole feet first program in the same price. It's $30 cheap. So lateral motion is where I use it at the end of the weave pulls the most, where I'm continuing straight and then I push off. So that's another subject. And again, the feet first is what breaks each one of these down. And then lack of motion. Decel is a turn cue. I never ever decel or show my dog a lack of motion when I don't want him to turn. I can't say never on that one. I do have a go on that means I'm about to stop and you're not gonna. So the dog is cued specifically to ignore the physical decel. So that's the fun part of creating a system of communication for me, you guys. The fun part for me is that I get to create a language. I'm creating a language. So I'm saying, when it looks and sounds like this, Mr. Dog, you can take it to the bank that it will mean this. And if it doesn't mean that, because I don't get to have it the way I want, which is I get to do everything the way I want to, then I'm going to do this and you're going to know it. There'll be an exception. So you should be asking me, well, when the heck wouldn't you be able to do when you want? Well, there are clever judges that put obstacles strategically in places that you have to run a path. And while you're running that path, you're actually cueing the wrong obstacle. So you have to tell the dog, don't watch my feet right now. Listen to me, because it's not what you think. My feet are lying. So I have ways to let the dog know this is a line and a lane lie. I'm talking to you. We are still going to turn. We're not going toward what it looks like. And the same thing with lack of motion is where I got off on that, is go on, because there's a gamble line, because there's a fast line. Go on means you now have permission to take obstacles and ignore me physically. But if I stop first and then I say go on, it's not going to work, because the dog will pick up the decel cue first. I see that all the time. People are like, I said go on. I'm like, yeah, but you did a decel cue first, and decel is a what?
Turn cue.
Unmute, throw it out there. Decel is a turn cue. Boy, once you embrace that, life just becomes easy in all regards. All righty, let's me get my article up here, because there are lots of photos and diagrams, and I just know you guys are gonna be comfortable asking lots of questions on this one today. And I'm going to screen share, and it wants me to be sure, and I am. So this article, I want to break down a little bit, because normally when I read, this was done in 2018. And if I were you and you'd been coming to the study groups, I'd have a few questions about some of the things I say here. So I won't torture you anymore, but there should be some things here that look like conflicts. What's that word? What's the word when you, contradictions. So you guys, I love explaining why I do and what I do and why I do it. I'd love to do that. So don't you ever worry about saying, wait a minute, Sandy, last week you said this, and I thought that was an absolute, because I am happy. They're dogs, and it is a sport that can't be mastered, just like golf. So there's got to be contradictions, but I've got it all figured out to this point, at least for me and my dogs. And that's all I can ever share with you, is what has worked for my dogs and my students' dogs. So I talked about the 7 turn cues here, and we already decided that our dogs were going to gain confidence and trust in our ability to communicate and often speed up. So Cindy either really just did read the article, or she remembered that from all our good times training in the past. So if you must always keep asking your dog if he still understands what you think he knows. I know you all know what that meant. And I think it doesn't apply to the dog's entire life. When your dog does not give you the desired response to a cue, ask yourself, when did he last see that? It's just like when you get to a trial and the first obstacle is the tire. It's like, oh, when did he see a tire last? And when was it the first obstacle? So it's easy for us to fall into the trap of expecting our well-trained older dogs to respond to even our everyday household commands. And this is a subject that we have covered in the study groups about maintenance. So when they're available on the website, we sure tried hard to have them for this. Today was going to be the day I was going to say, they're up, they're there. Next week for sure. So that was covered in maintenance, why a maintenance program is needed for some, but not all behaviors. Anybody know which are the ones that you don't need a maintenance program for? Which behaviors do I not have to keep my thumb on and maintain? The ones that are self-rewarding. Often the ones you don't want, but often the ones that you do want. So like tunnels. I mean, I don't have a maintenance program for my tunnels. I suppose I could have a dog that would. I do training cues maintenance, but as far as like, do you still love your tunnel enough to do it really fast? No, not, especially with the terriers. So do's and don'ts for training to turn. So do work a happy.
I'm glad you said that, Cindy, because of course that is something I work on, is my tunnel maintenance, right? For my dog.
Yes, that's a good point, because you have a dog that doesn't. The tunnel isn't the favorite thing, and you do have to build value in it, right?
Yeah, just because of their size, just because of how difficult it is for them.
Gwen runs Great Danes, so going through tunnels is not the most fun and easy part of their day. So she does have to have a careful balance of, I'll make it worth your while if you do it, but if she does too many, it'll backfire. So that's why I say, what is self-rewarding isn't obvious to each other, to us as a group, to each other. And your dog will tell you. Like Tuxedo really does love slamming into that 2-on, 2-off. He really does like it. And Tybo, my other border collie, he was real tactile. And I made a joke once about things that you would or wouldn't do to proof an obstacle. And I said, well, you would never, like if the dog was in the middle of the poles or in the middle of a dog walk, nobody would say, no, you come here. I mean, there is a line. And I would laugh because with Tybo, I probably could yell, no, you come here. And he would keep on weaving. Those weave holes were so self-rewarding. So it just boils down to what's easy and they love. But that's all on that maintenance. So if that interests you, or you know people, you get into conversations about it. So don't do too many repetitions, says the lady who just did a Zoom meeting on the benefits of repetition training of the same drill that your dog gets bored. Well, that's actually not a contradiction. You do the number of repetitions that you can keep the dog happy. Configuration repetitions and sequence repetitions have more movement than the single jump repetitions. So it is likely you would have to be more careful. And like things like backsides that are physically difficult, the number of reps. It's always about keeping the dog happy. But I honestly find that the person gets bored and cues the dog to get bored. The person gets lackadaisical and cues the dog to question. The person starts to worry and spoils the fun. So I've not had I've had some dogs that like to work longer than others, but I've never had a dog where I couldn't con them, entertain them, tease them, love them, reward them into the number of reps that I needed to do to teach them. That's all I just need enough to teach them. So mix the combos up, be creative. Don't train combos until you have trained the single cue. So you're not going to do a rear to a front if you don't have a rear. Don't keep going once you're out of position. This is especially true with front crosses in the middle of sequence work, you guys. You can't just praise the dog and then pick up. If you're going to do a front cross, you have to be ahead, way ahead. So you can't be playing with the dog and then suddenly try to bolt into. The idea of teaching is being in the right, doing it right. You don't have to practice doing it wrong. You can do that on the weekends at the trial. You don't have to do it in practice during the week. Get yourself in the right place. Do the right thing. Stay true to your original criteria on each cue. That's the size of the turn. Whenever you're teaching dogs to turn, based on their speed, based on their momentum, you should have an idea of what is rewardable, what is acceptable, and what is unacceptable. And that acceptable gray area is the one I can jack, that was awesome, I'm gonna jackpot it, or, oh, come here, bud, let's try that again. It didn't work. But that gray area, and sometimes you guys, the answer is what's the best thing to do, reward or repeat. Sometimes it's just nothing. It's okay to do nothing. Don't make your dog line up at your side or even sit every time. It makes the practice too boring. So I have two, if I'm doing lineups, training lead outs, I do lineups and lead outs. If I'm not, I play with the dog and we magically play over to the perfect spot and then we go. Or I have where I put my hand in the collar and I do a forward focus thing. And if you're wondering about forward focus, that's all, I go deeply into that, into the 2-on, 2-off program. So if you make them, you guys, lineups, I do lineups a lot. I build a lot of value in the lineup. I line them up a lot. I mean, I line them up for their dinner, their breakfast. I'm talking daily, and it still gets to be a drag. So I have high value built in it, and I still use it sparingly. It's just, I haven't met the dog that the lineup was the favorite thing. I've certainly had some that liked it better than others. And then you're brainwashing, you're tipping the scale. So if you have a dog that is like, oh, no, not another lineup, you got to pep it up and give them the steak and make them change their mind, brainwash them. Do sometimes start with your dog on his feet, hand on the collar. I just said that. Attitude, light, fun, high energy gig. That's what training is. It's not just for this. Head towards the jump stanchion that you expect the dog to turn on. And sometimes that's both. So that's just good handling. But if you keep it in mind, that's front cross, rear cross, pull. But you'll also, what I want you to notice is the times where if you're at an angle, you're heading towards both at the same time. And ask yourself, if you were the dog, how would you know the difference? And the answer should be, you wouldn't. That's why we need verbals and physical cues. Both directions and both sides of the jumps always. Practice some as lead outs as well as running with the dog. Always have a cue plan for the last jump you take. That's in sequence and coursework as well. And all that means is a plan to reward and whether or not you're wanting that dog to take that jump in collection or extension, which with these, it should be obvious with all of them. Try not to get ahead and be stopped. Do try to be ahead and stopped at the correct stanchion for pulls and front crosses. Do remember to get your hips fully rotated on the front crosses. So these particulars with the front crosses, if you're like, I'd like to know more about that, that's what feet first is. That's what it is how to get your feet and your hips and your body correct. So the don't stand in the middle, that's for when the jumps are in a parallel configuration. And you guys, actually standing in the middle and sending is something to practice. What I meant to say there is don't always just stand in the middle. If you're standing in the middle and working sends specifically, and that's again when you have two parallel jumps, this goes into the 1 jump, 2 jump program. And don't get discouraged if you can't make it to the ideal position. All of your turn cues should be able to be handled close up and at a distance anyway. And as you repeat and your dog gets a little patterned, you'll find ways to get into a better position. So the position I think I can make and the position I make on rep 1 versus the position I make on rep 3, which versus the position I can get to on rep 5 are always very interesting to me. As I move a little cleaner, a little faster, a little more direct, and I've got a dog that's patterning, so I don't have as much focus on the dog. I can focus on myself. That's why I love repetition training so much. So let's get into these drills. So this whole business of perfecting the physical cues, I talk about this almost every time I get together with you guys. And again, some of this stuff that I'm going a little faster for, if you don't understand it, you can always contact me, and we're getting to where the library will be able to be so you can go back. But I do train everything silently. And I do train everything verbal only with very little handling, so that when I put them together, I'm like working with a secret weapon. These up close single jump and double jump drills, I get the dog doing it fluently with no verbals. And when I'm handling for real, which means coursework, when I'm trying to get in sync with the dog, I'm always combining. So the first one is a rear into a pull. And I want the dog clearly behind the handler. And I'm going to go to the photographs because I think the photographs are really, really good for this one. So the rear into the front, it's hard to see here. Let's just go to the photos. Hard to understand on the diagram. So, and this will be covered in the webinar tomorrow night on feet first. I do 2 types of rear cross. One is a lateral where I'm crossing behind the dog with my onside leg. And I would do that if I was going into a front cross. So I never have to face the other direction. If I'm going to do a pull, I'm going to rear cross with the opposite leg, because here's my dog, as I step behind the dog, I have to rotate. So I am going directly from the rear into the pull. With the front cross, I'm stepping sideways so that the step that goes behind the dog's butt is actually the first plant step of the front. And that's why they're called combinations, because there's no traveling in between. The last step of the first cue is often the first step of the next cue. So this is Susan Larson with Murphy. It's a long time ago. So what I'm talking about, that Susan has only given the dog a small part of the jump. A lot of people, when they do rear crosses, they're way over here. They feel like the dog has to have the whole bar. This also illustrates what I'm talking about. She's facing the wing she wants the dog to turn on. So if she was over in this lane, I would want her dog to think that that this was the stanchion in play. This was the stanchion he'd be turning on. Is that an absolute? Can you always know? If she was over here and she wanted the dog to turn on this stanchion, she'd be heading to both at the same time. So it's when it's available, when that option is available. So she's given him just this little first third of the bar. And I love this picture because he's not even lifted off the ground and she's cutting. And you can tell on this next picture that she's doing that lateral motion, because we're not looking at the front of her, we're looking at the back of her. So her right leg she stepped away from herself. Her left leg stepped away from her right leg. And then she rotates into the front cross. So we don't see the front of her until he's coming around the stanchion. So these are the key elements to success of a rear cross. You see how close she is to the dog? If she had started over here first of all, the position should make him think he's turning on that jump, and she'd have to wait a long time. But her rear cross is completely done as he's jumping. And then her front cross, so the rear cross is done as he's leaving the ground, done. She's on the new side. Dog is on her left. Now the dog is on her right. And her front cross, the dog is back on her left, is done before he gets around the stanchion. I try to have my front cross done before. And you guys, for me, it's just fun. I'm just seeing, can I get this part done before the dog is here? Can I get that done? And then on the next rep, I'm like, what if I try sooner? What if I try sooner? What if I get behind when he's here? So that to me is the fun part. Any questions on that? We'll go again for the at the end. Can anybody tell me what skills I would have to have the dog trained? So you guys, one of my favorite topics is what's handling and what's training. Because sometimes I'm in a class and I'm trying to tell somebody what to do. So can you see one basic skill that the dog would have to be absolutely trained to do in order to do this?
Jump.
Yes, he would have to know how to do a jump. He would have to know how to do what with the jump. He would have to know how to go ahead of his handler and take a jump. He would have enough value built in the jump, and he could have had that taught with a send cue, with stanchion work, or even being sent to his bed. But his handler would have to have some way to get him to leave her and go to that jump in order to do a rear cross. And that's hard. I know that there's some folks on first and even second dogs, but people that try to train rear crosses when a dog doesn't know that have a miserable training session. You can cheat. You can have a handler entice the dog over like we'll do in class sometimes, but that's the trained part. One jump combinations, push through to a front cross. So the one thing about these pictures that I would have changed is, and I didn't really embrace this. You know how when you have people tell you stuff, like I probably tell you guys stuff and you're like, I hear it, but I don't fully get it. So with backsides or push throughs, they're the same thing. A lot of people say, well, the dog has to see the stanchion. And I'd be like, come on, it's a jump. It's right there. He can see the damn thing. But I have been in handling where my big old body was covering that stanchion. So the way Susan and Murphy are right now, Murphy can see that. But if I was doing this article again and taking the photos, I would actually have Susan here so that the photograph would look more like, because if she was handling this line, she's actually in his lane. If she was running, and maybe he was a little bit behind her. And when you're in the dog's lane, you want that to be a generic communication that you're not going, I'm taking the lane from you in order to take it out of play. So maybe she would be going to a jump over here and saying, I'm in the lane that you would normally take for the backside. So that's part of my system of communication, meaning you're not going to take it. In fact, if there was a tunnel over here and I had to pass that jump, and I wanted to pass it close, like in USDA snooker, I would be in that lane. So this is one of those times where I get to take some teaching material that I've created and make it clear I would run in this lane right here, first quarter of the bar, so that the dog's lane would be where Susan is. So Susan is doing a send cue. A send cue always has the foot under the hand. So she's doing a giant send cue, and that is almost what I call stuff position. It's we can't tell exactly how close she is. So now, is Sandy telling us that Susan is doing something right? Or is she telling us that Susan's doing something wrong? Neither. I'm saying that we don't know how well Murphy is trained. I'm saying that Murphy isn't doing an independent. That leg and the body are pretty much blocking. And so he's kind of being stuffed around the stanchion. There are times when you stuff. If you're gonna do a pull, and Susan's getting the front cross done with being that close to the jump, but it's with her legs this far apart, doing this. Susan's an athlete. So these big giant steps may not be in your tool wheelhouse or whatever they say. So you could train the dog to go to the backside with a smaller send cue. But if you don't have your dog trained and you got to get that backside, being in this position and doing a bit of stuff is the thing you would do. So her onside, which means dog side, leg and hand are good. That is a proper send cue. And she is stepping with her right foot to get the front cross. And as she's stepping, she's pulling away from the jump. So you can see by the time he reaches her that she's a stride or two away from that jump. Tinkerbell front crosses and John Wayne front crosses. Tinkerbell front crosses are the same side change done with tight footwork where you don't go anywhere. And John Wayne's are your covering ground in those 3 steps. And again, if this is something you don't understand or intrigues you, the feet first is where I really get into all that. But the point is, between her timing and her footwork, and that the fact that she's not turning in place on that front cross, she's covering ground, is correct handling. And if she could send Murphy to that backside and travel, she could be 20 feet off the jump. She could send 20 feet and travel on her front cross footwork and be 28 feet past the jump by the time he takes it. So, and the send cue is the most common cue for a backside. And when I did the 7 turn cues, I only taught it as a send cue, a send to a back, which you can't do send without somewhat of decel. Decel's a turn cue. It helps the dog turn. Now I have another way to handle backsides, which is handling and training, and it's a paralleling of the path. And we're not going to go there now. But just so you know that you should know if your backside, if you have a send and a parallel of the path. And the parallel of the path makes it so you don't have to decel to do the send cue. And we already talked about your dog not, when they don't understand a desired cue. So now these are 2 jump combinations and back-to-back drills. So there's the workbook is no longer in print. Clean Run and I are talking about getting it back into print, the 1 jump, 2 jump workbook, which had configurations of the jumps parallel to each other and end to end. So, and then these now with the 2 jumps, these can go endless. And in the feet first video, we've got one where it's just like, I've got the audience calling out what the cues are, and I'm just going endlessly with the 2 jumps. And Quilly Bear was the dog that I did all of that with. And man, she was trained. Whew, she was really, really, really trained. And I think that the fluency of showing your dog going from a rear to a front, from a back to, and let me go back to Susan here. I hope that you can all see with this is a backside push to a front cross, how easy she could have done a push to a pull. She would have just stayed here and rotated this shoulder around and been facing us. So backside to a pull, back to a front. You could not do a back to a rear on a single jump. So setting up all of these configurations. So this, this handler is doing a front cross. So she starts with the dog on her right and she fronts and then travels. And this handler isn't quite as close as you can tell to the stanchion. And she is over a little bit more. And I would even have her, if I was drawing this today, I would even have her over a little bit more. This is where a handler would have to be if the dog wasn't trained. It's not a bad or a good thing, you guys. We have to do what our dogs need us to do. So this is a front to a push. What's the handler ending on? There's actually 3 cues there. Front to a push to a what? The green handler. She pushed and then she whatted. The dog is on her left.
Pull.
Pull. This is actually a triple. Front to the push to the pull, what we were just talking about. So this is a front to a rear to a pull. So the handler, dog starts on the handler's left. The handler gets the front cross done before the dog lands, but she can't tear off. And you guys, this is, I think, how I see so many people struggle with SERPs if you have a 3-jump serpentine, we talked about this in one of these, where you have to get in that sweet spot to do the SERP on jump 2 and then rear cross jump 3. And at the shows, I see so many folks struggle because you're doing like 3 things in one spot. You got to hurry up and get ahead and then have a lot of patience, hurry up and wait. And I think doing these front crosses on these 2 jump drills, because I'm going to get my damn timing right if it's the last thing I do. So I'm hurrying to get that front cross rotation, but I have to tell my brain, just because I'm hurrying with my rotation doesn't mean I speed off as fast as I can. So I'm hurrying to get my rotation down, and then I'm dropping anchor is what I call it in my head, drop anchor a little bit to let that dog pass me, because this is the nose go zone on the rear cross. So if I get up here, you guys did train with me in my classes, if you arrive at the jump before the dog, you better not rear cross, because I might jump up and down. Because if you're in decel before the dog, when you arrive at the jump, that should be a wrap cue. So you have to get your front cross done nice and quick, and then take a little break and invite your dog to pass you. And then you can do that rear cross with the proper rear cross principles of being on the diagonal line. And what you would do if you forget, which I do all the time, you guys, I've learned everything the hard way, everything. If I forget what I was doing and I end up at this jump, I just don't rear cross. Just throw in the towel, let the dog turn toward you, and try it again until you can get it smooth. Because if you get up here and you slam on the brakes and then you do the rear, because it just reminds me of when we say, it's like, say I say, show me your sit, and you screw up and you say down. I mean, you're not, and the dog downs. You're not gonna, and I say, well, correct him, he didn't sit. Well, I didn't give him the cue to sit, Sandy. I told him down. I said it wrong. Well, if you cued it wrong, let the dog do what you cued. Always. Don't care. It's only wrong if you follow through on your wrongness. Throw in the towel. It's the best dog training tip. And then here is, so what's the difference between a pull or post turn? Pat White.
Not gonna pull it off, Sandy. Not gonna pull it off.
I don't know either. That's why I wanted to mess with you.
I got a puppy biting.
You guys, there is a technical difference. And again, when I wrote this to pull or post, when people started saying post turns, I got a bug up my butt, and because it's like, it's a pull. The dog stays on the same side, the handler rotates, and a pull can be big or small. So why do we need another word? Well, it's not such a bad thing. I've warmed up to it. A post turn means it's like a post, it's nice and tight, but your course numbers dictate how big the turn is. So when I wrote this article, I was on my a pull and a post should not have different words. And now I've graduated because I have an open mind and I evolve as a trainer, that a post turn, the world will understand that a post is tight and a pull isn't necessarily, but the thing to know is that the dog's response, it's all about how much decel was cued on approach, whether or not you get the turn tight or not. So if you don't cue decel and you do your turn nice and tight, your dog's going to go wide anyways. So to me, a tight pull turn has a decel, and a bigger pull, you guys, you could have a 180 where the two jumps are end to end and there's 18 feet between the two stanchions, and it's still a pull to pick up both of those jumps. So you can see how fun these get. I could have made this. So now the handler is starting with the dog on the left. He's done the push. And again, this handler is letting the dog have this lane. If this handler was over here, more where Susan was, I would say the handler's in the wrong lane. But this handler is in the space of the jump. This is what I call the space of the jump. But she really could even make that wing more prominent to the dog by being over just a little teeny tiny bit more. So this is a push to a front. And let me see here. So she's done the front cross, the black handler's doing the push, the green handler. So this handler turned into this handler. The dog is now on the handler's left, and she's doing another front cross. So this line, it's hard in clean run course design to get the lines absolutely perfect, but this handler, as she did the front, this last front would have needed to come over a little bit. So she would want to be in this position when this dog was here.
See, I had trouble with this one. To me,
yeah,
even though it said front cross, I don't understand why that isn't a pull, because the dog is staying on the left side from before 1 to 2. Isn't that just a pull from 1 to 2?
Left. The dog is on the left. The dog is on the left. It is. So I must have been calling this push to this front cross. You can see that some of them have 2 and some of them have 3 combinations. So if the dog is on the handler's left and this little arrow goes, you're right, Gwen, yet again, the push.
Thank you.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Thank you.
The dog's on the left and the dog is on the left, and she's come here for her front cross. What I don't like is that this handler should be here when the dog is here. So, and this is evolution of timing, you guys. And this is, notice that the handler has done the front cross before the dog reaches 2. So this handler is coinciding with this dog. And this dog should have just been another color. So I am telling you, notice that the handler is doing the front cross before the dog has reached 2. The dog needs the turn cue as he approaches the jump. So this diagram is showing a push to a front cross, and I just omitted that the pull cue was in the middle. I labeled this as a 2-parter. When I read it, I didn't memorize these before I came on board tonight. Looked at them, but didn't memorize them. Instead of being close to 1 for the push through, here we go. The handler uses a send to the backside from a distance. So this is training. This handler is also setting the line to the refusal line instead of the bar in order to get jump 2 in order to get ahead enough. So if this handler was in stuff position that I was talking about, she would not be able to get this front cross done before the dog got to 2. So that's when you start, using your timing. And this is why you really want to train a send to a backside. so that you can get your second. This is why I said back-to-back combinations and back-to-backs. So this is what these are all back-to-backs to get in position for the second turn cue from the first one. Any questions there? And then here's our other configuration, what I think I called the end-to-end jump configuration. So this front cross would be done for this dog. So the front cross, send to 1 is the black handler, so that you can be standing still at 2 to get the perfect pull. So you got to show decel to get a tight turn. And this is the hardest turn in agility, where the dog is on this line, because they would way rather take that jump like that. So she's going to send to be here before the dog gets here. And these you guys, what I want you to practice with your dogs is, and you can't trust, all you can do is trust the dog. You can't trust your brain, because what my dogs taught me is, if I'm running when they're here, so the dog is going on the red line, if I'm running to get into this position, which is inside of the wing, and I don't make hard eye contact with that dog as he's approaching and keep him on me, he's going to think I'm doing a crappy rear cross. If I'm right, and this is the reason why you can't be up to the jump when you're going to do a rear cross, because your dog will think in this case that it is. So the amount of work that I have to do patting my leg and saying here, 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 here to get this tight pull is a lot, because see how this dog is already turning? The handler got the lead changed here. The dog knew it was going left here. If she had just presented the jump, 100% the dog would have gone this way. So how long you need to be stopped ahead of your dog on these, don't be surprised if it is double and triple what you think. So doing that send, and then the front to get over there, and probably my front cross person should have been over here a little bit more, because she wants to she's pulling the dog on her left side around the stanchion. That's why the front cross was needed. So the send was the part that was left out. All of these are really 3. There's a send to a front, and that front she could have sent and made sure her dog was committed to 1, which is what I call information zone. These little lines are hard to draw in the exact spot of where you put your handler when you're drawing them. But the main thing about this drill, and this is a hard one, is that if your dog goes wrong, you weren't there soon enough. And you can say, well, I was here when he was there. That's what Sandy said. She said, if I was there, it'll work. Well, you could try a couple more times, but you've got to make hard eye contact with the dog and pat your leg a lot and say, I say close, 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 close. Or you could use your rap cue, dig, 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 dig. They're both legal, because one means stick to my leg and one means wrap the wing tight. So you could use a combo, get to my leg, but and the timing of the rotation. So I often call it the simple pull cue, but you've got the dog on the wrong lead and you need a tremendous amount of decel. And if you needed the dog, so this is if you need the dog on your right side. If you needed the dog on the left, you just do the front cross there, and that's what would be your preference. All right, got a few more. Any questions on those? Rear cross, so the timing on these diagrams is hard to comprehend, and feet, so if this is a nice refresher for you because you've done feet first or you've trained with me, that's great. Just remembering to do them and the importance of them. But if you're like going, I really don't understand the timing, the feet first is all video which is way more user-friendly than diagrams, because the diagrams are showing the configurations, but it's not possible. I try hard to show the timing, and I'm better at it now. I'm way better at it now. But just know that. Front to a rear. So the handler, that would be a mini send. The idea is that the front cross is done before the dog gets to 1. And this is a classic thing where you're, because I want the handler, so here's the dog's path is red. I want the handler on this side of the dog's path before the dog takes the jump, and really in the information zone. You guys, the information zone is determined by the speed of the dog, so it is situational to the configuration or the sequence and the size of the dog and the speed of the dog. So the information I identify, so it isn't, oh, I'll learn that my information zone for my dog is 9 feet on every jump. It's not going to work like that. You have to determine the information zone as you walk the course. The information zone is if it's a corner jump, it's going to be later. If there's a tunnel on the other side of it, it's going to be sooner. So so this is another classic thing of getting over there, getting your front cross done, but dropping anchor so that you can do a proper rear cross, which this handler has. A lot of people would get stuck. They do that front cross and they go, oh crap, I'm ahead. Too bad, I'll be in decel on this wing, and then wait for the dog to pass me. And it will work, but the handler will be on this wing when the dog is here, where this handler is almost past the jump and could have been further up. Yeah, she might have been. It depends on how fast the dog is. Some of you would be up further. Some of you wouldn't. I might not be.
Sandy, I have a question on this one.
Yes.
There's the dog has a bend to go over jump 2, and the dog is on your right.
On my left.
I'm
Jump
sorry,
2.
yeah, you're on your left. And what's to bend the dog while you're doing the rear cross so that the dog just doesn't continue on your left?
When you cross right here,
Yeah.
it'll create a lead change and put the jump in the dog's path. So
But the dog's in front of you, so how is the dog gonna know that?
when you cut behind it, in order to do the jump, he's going to have to make a lead change because the jump is there. So you're saying what cues this turn off of this line?
Correct.
And the answer is the rear cross, because a rear cross creates a turn. And if this handler was in a different lane, Amy, if this handler was down here, that it could pull the dog off of the jump. But there's a bigger element here that I want people to know. And it has to do with timing and how you reward timing. In our country, I learned this when I was competing overseas. We have more refusals because when we give cues and it pulls the dogs off jumps, we get excited because, oh, he took my turn cue and the jump is less relevant, and that's a problem. So the real reason why my dog would take that jump, even if I was in a different lane, the jump, and when you do these, it'll be clear. But the bigger reason, it'll be clear that the rear crosses causes a turn cue. When you cross your dog will change leads, and that puts the jump in play. But the bigger thing is, when in doubt, take the jump. So if you said, why is he going to take that jump? My real answer that I want to give you is because it's there. Because I'm not going to be running that close to something that I don't want you to take. The jump is cued properly with the rear cross. So in this case, but if the jump hadn't been cued, the dog will take the jump in this case because it's cued properly. But the dog has also learned through generalized training that if it isn't perfect, when in doubt, take the jump. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I'll have to try it.
It's the rear cross that creates the turn. Push through to a front cross. So again, the handler has trained. Now, what's hard about this push? The dog has to, this is a real independent push because the handler actually has the bar in play as well. So the handler's hand is correct, but we're not going to train our dogs to say, my hand, I want this cursor to turn. That you have to understand the difference, you guys, that saying to your dog, hey dog, if I'm pointing here, you better know it. And if I'm pointing here, you better know it. You better know it's the bar. If I point here, it's the refusal line. If I move my hand this much, it's the bar. Why can't we have that? We can't have that because we can never be that good. We cannot hold the dog accountable to what we can't do ourselves, in my humble opinion. So this is where the dog has learned the lane is correct, her cue is correct, and her scent and her verbal has been taught to a very high degree. So because for her to plan to do this backside to this front cross, this is training. This is, she can be here when the dog is here. And actually I would even have this handler cueing this dog. See how I've got two dog, I've got these all in the same color. So the timing, my timing, even just over this year, has gotten better. So could everybody do this? Every slowest handler with the fastest dog? If the dog is trained well enough, absolutely. I have plenty of students that could send from further. They could get that backside from oh, I'm pointing with my finger, sorry. They could get that backside from here and just look over their shoulder and be on this side of this lane before the dog takes the jump. Is this front cross late as I'm showing it? Maybe he hasn't landed. Ideally, the dog would be right about here, guys. All righty. Pull to a front cross. Pull at number 1. Where are we starting here? So this is one of those nice tight pulls. So the handler is rotating, and the handler should be facing this direction before the dog lands. And again, if you need video, hate to keep saying it. And this would be a little bit of a send as well, a send into a front. So the handler, this handler is rotating. We could call this dog to this handler. Handler is done. It's a little far ahead, but this dog would be just a little bit. So the timing for all of these, you guys, would be just a little bit further ahead. Questions there? Handler's doing a nice tight pull, a bit of a send. So I would not run. So this is the same thing as we had the post turn here. This is the same, except for it's the backside. So the handler to do the post turn versus to do the front cross. Rear cross into a front, into a push. So this time our this time our handler would be crossing the dog with her left leg, and I do rears directly into fronts. That's what Susan showed. So you guys, again, showing this right on top in the diagram, the handler is stepping across with her onside foot and getting that front cross done before the dog lands, and then moving. We can go here. At what point would she be? Now, maybe she's handling silently to get those cues sorted out with the dog. But if she was going to start using her, adding her verbal in, when would she start telling the dog her backside command? Anybody? Where's the information zone for the push? refusal line of 1. So when the dog is at the refusal line of 1, the handler, no matter where they're at in the space, would be looking over their shoulder, telling the dog, push, 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 staccato, repetitive, verbal. And then this is this timing is correct. The pull cue, the red dog, the handler has finished the pull. So you can see the nice clean lane that the handler is getting all these turn cues. She's not bobbing in and out. She's paralleling the path during the turn cue on the same path and coming right back. So this is paralleling this path. This is paralleling this path. Yes, Gwen?
Sorry, I was actually just saying goodbye. I gotta go.
Oh, goodbye. Oh, it's 7:04, you guys. Oh my gosh. Time flies when you're having fun. So you guys, I think that this is all, you can see that they go on. Goodbye, Gwen. Sorry, I got into it. This is a rear to a pull to a front. And I just really encourage you to set these up and do them and try to get your timing better and better and better. It's 7:05 if anybody has to go. If you have questions for me, I've got nowhere to be. I'll stop screen sharing. Or has anybody got a question? Yell yes if you want me to leave the diagram up.
I have a general question that doesn't really need a diagram.
Okay, I gotcha.
How many of these would you tackle in one training session? Or is it, because my head starts to spin looking at a whole bunch of them.
Yeah.
And I imagine the dog would too. So would you just tackle one at a training session or a couple of them, or?
Well, it depends if you're asking me about my, my green dog, my experienced dog, my dog with less energy, or my dog with more energy. It's impossible to answer, because the other thing is if I'm going to work on a rear to a front and I get a hiccup with my rear cross, like you guys, it happens to me too. It's like I go out and it's like they knew it yesterday and there's a wire cross. We've got a hiccup. So I will I'm always on whatever page the dog is on. So, what I love about your question, Amy, is you've answered for yourself. You said my head spins looking at all of them. The kiss of death, here's the real answer, would be to have any expectations that you were going to get through anything at all. You take 2 of them or 3 of them out. And because the idea is to perfect them. The idea is fluency and perfection and enjoying it. So if you've taken out 4 and you're going to work on, let's see if I can get through all 4. Don't do it. Don't do it. Just take a couple out. I'm going to recommend for you. Take 2
so
out.
if I don't even get through 1, I just scrap 2.
Oh yeah, I never expect to get, when I'm training, I'm seeking fluency and comprehension. So I want full comprehension on the dog's part and fluency. I saw a thing One Mind Dog said, and they said, don't practice till you get it right. Practice till you can't get it wrong. So that's what I'm doing. I would, the rear cross to the front, I would rather just work on both sides of that and get it fluent. And then I check back in on it too. That's the other thing. If you're like, okay, I did, rears to fronts, now I'll do pushes to fronts, and you never go back and check that other. And here's the other thing. If your dog gets stuck on something and you, work it and work it and work it and work it and it gets smooth, and then you go, okay, now we'll move on. Don't be surprised if that extra work on that one part kind of got you stuck there. That should be something you should be proud of. Don't get frustrated. Like, okay, now I gotta say, yeah, but when I do this now, it means that. That's what fluency is. So I'm gonna let you guys go. If you liked this, go to Clean Run Learning Center, and it's only $30, you guys. It's less than a half-hour private, and then I'll be taking questions on that on tomorrow night and Saturday morning. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks a lot.
you. Good to see everybody.